you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery.
Illuminati philosopher, and these are my thoughts. Did you know that when black people got out of slavery, it was much easier to attack and marginalize them? Lynching, murder, theft, vagrancy, denying jobs, imprisonment, etc. all skyrocketed after slavery. If you have control of a people, why would you give that up? Well, they didn't have control over black people under slavery. They had more control over black people under the free system. I'll explain later. There's a lot of misinformation surrounding slavery. Yes, there were problems under slavery, but as usual, when white people talk about African or black history, they tend to exaggerate or straight up lie. Most of our information about history for the past 500 years is coming from black or white people. In those past 500 years, the attitude that white people had towards black people was more positive or negative. In those past 500 years, who had the power to race swap? White people or black people? Are you going to get the whole story by listening to one side?
White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery.
Arguably, it was more racist back then than it is now. So you have to ask yourself, why would white people do something that supposedly benefits black people on an enormous scale? Because apparently slavery was so horrible, right? And apparently they had more control over blacks. Arguably, more racist back then than now. So why would they do that? Why get rid of slavery if they had more control over black people under slavery? Remember what I said at the beginning. When black people got out of slavery, it was much easier to attack and marginalize them.
When I was really struck by this distinction that you touched on just now, but it kind of really drove home in the book, is that, post-war, that constraint on what the patrol could do to an African American was because they were someone else's property. And then after the war, murder is really just skyrockets.
Absolutely. This is actually what was the tip-off to me about why are there slave owners serving on patrols? Well, they're effectively like the brakes, if you will, on what might otherwise be a runaway car. If you imagine yourself into the mind of someone who is not a slave owner, who's put on to slave patrol duty because you got your name got pulled, or you were the one who your record got pulled and the court put you on, you might have no sympathy whatsoever towards either slaves or their owners, and you might be the first person in line to say, let's just shoot him. And that sounds crude, but that's the reason why the slave owners were part of the patrollers, was to prevent that sort of going off the rails behavior by people who otherwise would have no reason to stop. And those breaks are gone in the post-war period. There's no property angle in African Americans. Indeed, there's a negative, a strongly negative incentive. If that individual owns land that you want, if they have crops that you want, if they have something else that you want, then of course you're going to use all the violence in the world to try to get it.
I knew this for the longest time. People know this subconsciously, but they don't make the connection. I remember seeing this on Twitter during the 100th anniversary of Black Wall Street. All those massacres are under the free system. Now you have to understand what they mean by freedom. The freedom to do whatever they want to people that they don't like. Under the slave system, they wouldn't be able to do that. They would have been rounded up and executed or put in prison if they damaged or destroyed a slave owner's property. The slave owners are not going to tolerate their slaves being lynched or attacked every 5 seconds. If Black Wall Street was a slave plantation, all those white people would have been rounded up and executed like John Brown. There's no way they would get away with that, but under the so-called free system, they could get away with that, and they got away with so much because of their free system. They're controlling it. If blacks were property now, the police would act totally different towards black people. The businesses, corporations, companies, etc. would protect their property, and they would be constantly suing police departments to the point where the police departments would change their attitudes. So it'd be a totally different story if they were still property, but whites knew by removing the property status, they had more control over blacks.
White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery.
When people talk about slaves being property, they act like it's a bad thing. We all know property is valuable. If a stranger walks into your home and knocks over your favorite $5 lamp, would you think that's okay? I mean, it's just your property, right? And it's only $5. I keep on asking people all the time, do you purposely damage or destroy your property? Most people do not want to answer the question because they know what I'm referring to. This one guy said that I could do whatever I want with my property. I said, yes, you could do whatever you want with your property, but does that make sense to purposely damage a good property? I understand if the property is not good, you just get rid of it and stuff like that, but if it's decent, why would you purposely damage it? Doesn't make any sense, right? Now, let's say I'm a business owner, and I have a business, a restaurant business, and I have to clean the toaster oven every morning. Every morning I have to clean the toaster oven, and one morning I get pissed off and I start bashing in the toaster oven. Well, now I have to get a new toaster oven. And let's say there's other property in my business that I use my bat with. Well, I'm an idiot because I'm going to destroy my business. I'm not going to have a business, and thank God this is not property that's going to attack me later. A business owner purposely damaging and destroying his property is counterproductive to a good business. But apparently, this is what the vast majority of slave owners were doing. They drill that nonsense in our heads when it doesn't make any sense. Some did, most did not, which is why slave owners were pissed off with the abolitionists because they were spreading propaganda and lies about their culture, their business practices. The South lost the war, so their narrative is rubbed out, and the victors, the North, can say whatever they want about the South. So you see, white people got rid of slavery in order to control black people. As strange as that sounds, that is the case. Under the slave system, they're held accountable. Yes, some people slip through the cracks, but ultimately, if we still had slavery today, black people would be doing a lot better for themselves, and more whites would be in prisons than blacks. The reason why I say that, because slavery is a disciplined system and there's more accountability, which is why white culture wanted to move away from it and be free. But if you really think about it and understand freedom, it means you could do whatever you want, and that should not be the case because a lot of people, especially the people that they don't like, are going to be harmed in the process. The true history is starting to come out, and I'm loving it. Time to put these fake people in their place. Illuminati philosopher, and these are my thoughts.